Now, I don't know if Kenya was aware of this when she gave her this ring, but she gave her the ring. Okay, so the episode opens with the conductor being questioned, and Kerrigan is basically asking him who he is, why he was there, and of course the conductor is trying to spin this tale about how he saw these, people go in to attack her, and then he went in, somehow they were able to get out, and then he ran out, and that's when he got caught, and he had nothing to do with anything, and he's spinning this tale, and not knowing that the guy standing next to him was a heart render, so he already knew he was lying. He was like, it's lies, everything he's telling you is a lie.
How much of that is true?
He did cross the fold with the others. The rest were lies.
And then, he continued, continued talking, and he walked over and he pulled his sleeve up and he saw the markings on his arm. Now, if you remember, every time for every successful crossing, he would put a mark on his arm. And so that's how he was able to tell. From that, he concluded that he was the conductor.
You are the conductor. Arkan Visser. Are you not?
And then he got upset because he said, you've been smuggling Grishas out of my palace. And then he was like, well, no, I don't smuggle Grishas. I only illegal indentured servants. And of course the guy was like, that's also a lie. So now we're on the Maury show. The lie detector test proves that was a lie. So he originally started questioning him. Like, I know because people crossed to attend the fete from the West. And so he's saying that he named a couple of people, and he said, I know you didn't come over with them, which means that you found another way. And then he started talking about his connection with the general in the West. And this was the guy, if you remember, when they decided to continue on with the mission after Nina disappeared. And he sent them to collect a couple of things, and Kaz was responsible for getting the go. And the guy who was giving this speech about how they're tired of sending money to the East, and how they need to be their own separate entity. And then he saw the conductor go into a tent with the same guy and talk to him.
So you made another deal.
That is the guy. I thought it was, obviously the other guy that Maul was under, but it's the guy he had the meeting with in the tent who struck a deal with him to kill Alina. So then he tried to switch sides, saying that I can help you. He knows me, he trusts me, I can get close to him. And Kira was like, I don't really need you for that. And basically, you told me all I needed to know. And so he just went on and killed him, and that was that. So Alina's still in the back of this, trunk that's in the back of this carriage. And of course the carriage eventually stops. She, feel like it's safe for her to get out. But as she emerged from the trunk, they were all just standing, watching, waiting for her to come out. And they're trying to tell her that, they're there to try to help her, and that, this could work out for everyone. And she's like, no, I'm not going to be held captive again. And then she kind of temporarily blinded them, this flash of light. And Inez basically, she wasn't affected because the guys were a lot closer to her, and so she saw her and she just let her go. Like, what else is she gonna do? So back at the palace, one of his guards came in, say he had an update, and he assumed that it was about Alina, and he was like, well, no, this was the guy that he sent to investigate what happened to Nina. And so he told him what happened, that she was kidnapped by Grisha hunters, and that she's on the ship, and something happened with the ship, and they lost contact. And so this is when he realized that there's a traitor in their midst, because only somebody who would be privy to her location or what she was doing would have been able to pass that information on.
She was abducted by Fiorans. Put on a ship with other Grisha captives.
And so he is now tasked with finding out what happened to Nina. So we flash to Nina, and of course the bad storm, basically it just destroyed the ship. And so you see her, she's hanging onto a piece of wood, and eventually she ends up seeing the guy who was trying to bribe her with food. He was half dead on a larger piece of wood, and so she was able to revive him because she could do that with her abilities allowed her to do that. And now they're realizing that they have to work together in order to survive, because they're in the middle of the ocean. They seem to be the only survivors at this point. And so Gotta do what you gotta do. So we go back to the palace, and Kieran is in his room. He called for Zoya. He's basically telling her that he's assembling a team because they're going to go out and, of course, search for Alina, and he wanted her to be a part of the team.
Yes. At sundown, I'm leading a team to pursue the criminals who took Miss Starkov. I'd like you with me.
And then, of course, her, trying to dig her heels in was like, what if she wasn't abducted? And of course, he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, what if she wasn't abducted? What if she was rescued? Like, basically, what if she left on her own accord?
Maybe she wasn't abducted. Maybe she was rescued. Maybe she ran with them.
And of course, he just can't fathom that being the case. So he went and sat down and was, apologized, like, I don't feel like myself today. And you can tell from that conversation that obviously they had at some point an intimate relationship, which kind of explains why she felt so threatened by Alina. And she basically, was basically saying how she knows how to, help him relax if he would just let her relax, he would just let her, do what she do. And he went on and stuck the knife in a little deeper by saying that the only way he'll be able to relax is when they find Alina. And he got up and he walked away.
I shall relax when I have Alina.
And so she's been rejected again by a guy for Alina. And so she had a little tantrum, and next thing you know, a gust of wind, blew through and blew his little papers off the desk and kind of messed up his bed a little bit, and that was that. Like, now, she really has it out for Alina, because this is what, the third guy that's rejected her? Girl, because you a hating ass bitch. So Alina is, walking through the market of this town, and she could see Jesper kind of asking questions about, if somebody saw someone matching her description. So she was able to slip out. And no sooner than she was able to slip out, this guy, saw her and made her as a shoot. I forget what, they called her. And now she gets into a tussle with one of the guys and end up using her powers. And now these people are after her. They done chased her in the woods. And somehow Maul was able to find her.
Let's move to the other end.
So the guards who were looking for her kind of bypassed her. They couldn't find her, and so they went in another direction. So they finally have their much needed conversation. Of course, she's upset, and she's like, where have you been? It's been months. And
Where have you been?
I've been tracking you ever since you left the palace the night of the fete.
So now I have your attention. It's been months, Mal.
he's saying that he wrote her, he never received a word from her, and he wrote her every day. And she was like, oh, so what were you writing about? Your exploits with beautiful squalls? And then she was like, are you still afraid of Grisha women? And he was like, only the ones that lie to me.
You still afraid of Grisha women?
Only ones that keep secrets from me.
And because at this point he doesn't know what's going on. Like I said, the last time he saw her is when they all saw the light show, and he didn't know. And so she had to tell him that, I didn't know that I was Grisha. And he said, I saw you cheat on the test. She was like, well, yeah, I cheated on the test, not because I knew that I was Grisha, it's because I didn't want to risk, leaving. They would have taken me away. They would have separated us.
They would have taken me away.
To a palace, Alina.
They would have split us up.
And, he kind of, he understood because that's just, their relationship. And then he told her about how he found the stag and how Kieran sent this drawing of, the drawing that he sent was, he knew that was Alina's work. And he thought that was a message from Alina. And then this is when Alina, she realized that he took that from her sketchbook. She had no idea he had taken that sketch.
He stole them from my journal. Backwards telling the truth.
So, and then eventually, they hugged it out, and she thanked him for coming for her. And of course he said, always.
Thank you for finding me.
Always.
And he said that he needs to find shelter because, you know, it's going to be dark soon and they're in the middle of the woods. It was so funny because they was all emotional and it was all hard, you know, in these letters. And now they back together and it's like they can't even barely look each other in the eye. Like, what's that about? What's going on? Okay, so Inez met up with Kaz at the local tavern and she already knew it was going to be a conversation. He basically asked her, so what happened? How did she get away? And then she didn't beat around the bush. She basically said that she let her go.
Are you going to tell me how the target got away?
I let her go.
And he's telling her that we were hired to do a job. And we're supposed to be a team. And we can't let sentimentality get in the way of that. And so she starts saying that, you know, her... she won't betray her faith. And he made a statement that made her believe that, you know, when they got back that she would go back to Helena. And he basically said that if we don't finish this job, Helena's going to get the Crow Club and I guess Jesper's going to get whatever's left.
Either we get the target or Helene gets the Crow Club and Pekka gets whatever's left.
Wait.
And of course at this point she had no idea that he had made that agreement, that he had put up the Crow Club in order for her to go. And so now she's like, oh my God, what have you done? But at this point, he had already got up and walked away because he was pissed. So Maul and Alina there, he found a cave for them to stay in for the night. And, you know, he's kind of hobbling around a little bit. And she asked him if he was okay. And, you know, he's still nursing his injury, this bullet wound in his shoulder. And he has this bad cut from his fight with the bad guys. And so... he claimed that he was okay and, you know, he's just cold and hungry. And, you know, he told her that they couldn't actually cook anything because the light and the smoke would alert, you know, show their location. And, of course, people would, you know, come in. And so they didn't cook anything, but she did say that she could help him, I guess, to help warm him up. And so he saw her use her powers for the first time, and he was kind of amazed, astonished, maybe even a little frightened a little bit. And she even asked him, like, are you afraid of my powers? And he said, no, I'm not afraid of your powers. And then she asked, are you afraid of me? Now, while he did eventually say that he's not afraid of her, it took him a little bit longer to answer that question.
Twice gay.
And then he was like, well, why would you ask that? And so she was like, because I saw, you know, I could see it in your eyes. And they talked a bit, and he basically, you know, told her that he apologized for not seeing who she was, and he see her for, you know, who she really is.
I'm sorry. It took me this long to see you, Alina.
And I'm like, you're gonna kiss at some point. Like, just go on and get it over with. Why are you dragging? What's going on? What's going on? So back at the tavern, Jesper arrived and he told Kaz that he had set an alarm on the carriage that they used, and he hid their supplies. And so shortly after, Inez came over and said that she had settled their tab. And so Taz basically told them that they've spent too much time looking for Alina. The general is hot on their heels, and they basically need to skedaddle.
If we don't move soon, the Black General will be on top of us. We can't waste any more time looking for the girl.
And so, of course, Jesper's like, so what? We just gonna leave empty-handed?
We're really gonna leave empty-handed then?
So while this conversation was happening, the general, you know, his carriage and his people pulled up. And they saw the carriage. And so, of course, someone recognized it as being the carriage that fled the scene. And the alarm that Jesper was talking about was a booby trap. So when the person went over to investigate to open the door, it exploded, which of course alerted them that, oh, they're here. So of course people scattered out of the tavern, but by the time they got out there, they were already, the general's folks was already surrounding the place. And Inez, she saw, but was making eye contact with this woman, and they did a flashback of when Inez ended up killing that guy that was about to kill Kaz, and it was her brother. And so she recognized Inez, and then next, all hell broke loose, and they all scattered and made a run for it. So they each went in separate, different directions. So the woman she's hot on the hill. She's trying to get Inez for killing her brother. Another guy is trying to get Jesper, and this woman is trying to get Cass. So they're each just flashing back between all of these altercations. So the guy is after the guy that's after Jesper. He ran into what looked like, I don't know, it looked like I know it was laundry and stuff hanging up everywhere, and there was a little kid in there who was asleep, and so you got all this stuff going on around this child that you didn't know was there until later. And so Jesper is a crack shot, so he ends up shooting the guy in the shoulder. And the guy ends up saying, I guess you don't know that our uniforms are bulletproof.
Has no one told you Kaftas are fabricator made and resistant to bullets?
And so Jesper was like, oh, well, I love a challenge. And so the guy was like, well, if you love a challenge, just come out and face me. And so Jesper kind of maneuvered around, and he made it a point, he kept hitting them in that same spot. So it was bulletproof, but he still felt, the impact. And the more he hit him in that same spot, eventually he was able to incapacitate the man. Oh, excuse me. And he ends up knocking him out. So that's just the guy, that's Jesper's guy. He took care of him. So Inez, she's now fighting with the woman, and they're, in hand-to-hand combat, and she's just giving as good as she got, right? And the woman, did end up injuring her, but Inez was still able to get the drop on her. She ends up stabbing her. And she told her that she should wait until there's a healer present to pull the knife out, otherwise she'd bleed to death.
I'd wait until the healer's close by before you pull this out.
And so the woman, she just couldn't, stop. She had to say her piece, and she basically said that she was going to hunt every person that she loves down and kill them, including her. And of course, Inez was like, well, since you feel that way, I'm just going to go home and take my knife back, if you don't mind. And so she pulled the knife out, and the woman, we are just going to assume that the woman bled to death.
In that case, I'll take my knife back.
And so the woman that was after Cass, somehow he was able to disappear in the crowd, and she got extremely frustrated, right? But he didn't get too far because the general found him. And so now the general is questioning him, asking him about Alina and why did they abduct her and where is she? And
I know you kidnapped my son, Summoner. And now you're going to tell me where you stashed her.
He had to explain to the general that we didn't abduct her. She left of her own free will. And you kind of see his facial expression like, okay. And they talked a bit. And he wanted to know where she was. And of course, he was like, I didn't know, we don't know where she is. Apparently, she didn't want to risk being held captive again. And so the general was about to use his powers. He was about to kill Cass. But Cass was one step ahead. He had something in his hand, and he slammed it, threw it on the ground. There was this explosion, and he pretty much vanished into thin air. Even the general is confused at, like, what just happened. So the following morning, Maul and Alina, they're kind of talking through things, and, she wanted to tend to his wounds. And so, of course, she saw the wounds and how bad they were, and she, of course, asked him, well, what happened? And he explained that they were behind enemy lines and that they were ambushed, and, he got injured. And he also told her that his two friends were killed in the process. And he feels guilty about that.
We got caught on the wrong side of the Fjord border. Barely made it out alive.
And then she started asking him about the stag and how much information did he give the general about the stag. And he basically said that he was, quite general and where it was located, because he, remember, he was never specific because he wanted to see Alina first.
Did you tell General Kerrigan where to find the stag?
And so she's talking to him about them, you know, making the plans for them to get there first. Because if she's able to get the power or amplify her powers, then maybe she'll be strong enough to destroy the fold.
It might make me strong enough to destroy the fold.
And so now they're getting themselves together to go where he last saw the stag. So the group is back, you know, I guess outside the tavern. Inez eventually arrives, and they clearly see that she is injured. She is in no condition to fight, or, I mean, she could barely walk.
Inez, hey.
And so they look over, and they're like, oh, that's a nice carriage. It was the general's carriage. And so it was still one guy sitting in there, I guess, waiting for everybody to come back. And so they went on and booted him out and stole the carriage.
Hello.
So shortly after the general arrived, and just the guy was trying to explain they stole the carriage, the general's like, I already know. And David, who is the I can't forget what he is, but this is the same guy that Genya is in love with. He told the general that Genya had given Alina this ring, which she did when she was helping her dress for the fete. And that if they get close enough, that he'll be able to use that ring to track her.
Well, Genya gave her a ring to Ravka, so when we get within 1 mile of her, I can direct us.
Now, I don't know if Genya was aware of this when she gave her this ring, but she gave her the ring. So the final scene is General. He's now talking to the guards that got into the fight with Alina, that, you know, she kicked her behind, and, you know, they chased her into the woods and lost her at that point. And so after the conversation, the general has now been made aware that, okay, so she's on her way to find the stag.
Miss Starkov is in the woods. She's going after the stag.
And by his facial expression, he's not happy. So that's pretty much how this episode ends. I'm going to end this here, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.